There you go.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for coming. For those of you who don't know me in the room, I know a lot of you, but not all of you. I'm Jared Sullivan. If you live in Bethlehem or Franconia, we stay rep. So if you have any questions, you can talk to me. If you're outside that district, you can still talk to me. Totally fine. But thanks for coming today. This is awesome. This is a bigger turnout than I expected, so I think that's fantastic. I'm really excited that Joyce came up here to talk to you guys. I know many of you in this room have not met her, so it's a great opportunity to meet her. I endorsed Joyce about a year ago, actually. It was last August, I think, right? And she came up, she called me on the phone. We had a great conversation about who she is and what she stands for and all that sort of stuff before I'd ever met her. And I said, hey, I'll give you a tour of the North Country if you want. So she came up and we went to Maya Papaya for like a coffee with whoever showed up type of thing, and like, I don't know, 15 people or so showed up maybe. We went to the adult discussion group at the library. We went to senior center lunch. We walked the town. We ended up here, and then we had an event, and I showed her this place, which was still in construction at that time. And then we ended up in Franconia for, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 people or something to kind of introduce her as well then. But during that time, we had a meeting with a head, and Harrison, who's the CEO of the head. And for those of you who don't know him, he's probably one of the smartest guys in the state when it comes to the housing problem. And I think housing is probably the biggest problem that this state faces. And I think most people probably agree with you. I don't think that's a particularly controversial statement. So I was super impressed, and that's what made me decide to endorse Joyce, was she sat there and Harrison was like, well, we're trying to build this using money from this program. And Joyce knew what those programs were. And then Joyce had a story about some project down in Manchester that had to be delayed, and they actually, I think they laid off some people because it was like a large project, like over 100 units, I think. And she's like, yeah, because even though the money's there to help come from the state programs, it's not getting out fast enough, and so they're actually shutting down and delaying projects. And that's a huge problem when we're in the middle of a major housing crisis. And so I was like, this is the type of like knowledge that comes from managing a big city in our state, which has to deal with all these issues all the time, and she's in that sort of chief executive role, if you will. And I think that will translate well into being a governor in the state. And in addition, like Joyce, I hope you have a chance to talk to her one-on-one. She's a very kind person. She's empathetic. You'll feel that she's a real human, which is great. And she doesn't have negative messages. And if you look at her opponent, Kelly Ayotte, everything is like, don't mass up New Hampshire, or going after immigrants. Like, everything is negative, everything's vague, it's not a policy solution, there's no like real substance behind anything she puts out, whether it's an ad, whether it's some of the mailers show up at my house. I've seen them recently. I look at them and it's like, the most recent one was going after her primary opponent, and it's like literally a racist attack on Latino people. And it's like shocking. It's like a Latino person driving a car as if it's an illegal immigrant with gang signs on his face saying Chuck Norris supports people like this. Like, I was shocked to see this ad. And so that's what we're having on the other side. So I'm really excited for Joyce to be here to introduce you guys, because I think she's the best candidate on the Democratic side to be able to take on Kelly, who has great name recognition because she was our senator before. And so I really hope that you guys get a chance to talk to her. And with that, I'll hand over the floor. But before I do, is if you like everything you hear today, if you like talking to Joyce, she's going to need a lot of resources to beat Kelly in the general. So if you like what you say, you can give some donations to her on ActBlue, or maybe before you leave if you'd like. So with that, the floor is all yours.
So Jared, I just want to thank you for all that you've done for your community and for residents across the state. As a new state rep, you stepped right in there and tackled some of these tough issues. And really, it shows a lot of who you are, and you really want to lift people up. And I appreciate your work and your friendship, and all you've done for me and help in this campaign. Jordan, I want to call you out too. Where are you?
I've been turned to the better.
Well, she's done an incredible job with this place. When we first saw it, it was under construction, and now it is this place that people want to be, welcoming to all in Littleton. And I think that says a lot too, and it's a partnership between the two of you. And it's great to be back in the North Country. We have spent a lot of time here listening to all of you and making sure that when we win in November, we are meeting your needs. And then lastly, before I get started, I want to recognize my family, because this is the first time that my entire family has been together for one of my campaign events. My husband Mike, my youngest daughter Catherine, my middle daughter Sarah, and then William, who lives in Philadelphia, and it's his 27th birthday today. As you can imagine, with 3 kids, they're all over the place all the time. Mike's always been right there. But it's really great to have all of you here today once before we hit the primary. So, you know, we live in a state that is brimming with potential. And I'm running for governor to ensure we strengthen our local communities and make sure residents throughout our state have the opportunity to succeed. You know, as Jared mentioned, for the last 6 years, I served as the chief executive for the city of Manchester. And I know local government is different throughout our state. In Manchester, we don't have a city manager. So it was my job to develop the annual budget of $400 million every year. I nominated department heads and city commissioners, negotiated contracts, managed all of the city departments, and was chairman of the Board of School Committee and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And when you think about a chief executive, it's all about setting priorities, building trust, and getting things done. And as mayor, I set the vision for Manchester and worked hard every single day to build a stronger community. And after more than a decade of Republican mayors, I was able to get Manchester back on track by creating opportunities for our residents. And I will tell you, after 8 years of Republican leadership at the State House, I am ready to get this state back on track. I'm a 4th-generation resident of New Hampshire. Grew up in a blue-collar household. My dad was an IBEW 490 electrician. And when I think back about my childhood, I know I was fortunate to grow up in this beautiful state with 2 loving parents. But it wasn't always easy for us. There was a time when I was young when my dad actually had to move to Wisconsin for over a year to work. And that feeling of my father having to leave us has stayed with me. And it's why I've always supported hardworking families and created good paying jobs. And I delivered. I helped hundreds of small businesses open, brought in hundreds of millions of dollars of economic development, and today Manchester is one of the hottest job markets in the entire country. And when you think about it, these jobs are creating opportunities for residents across our state. And I'm always looking for ways to move my community and our state forward. As mayor, I took climate change and rising energy costs seriously. We built the largest municipal solar array in the state, saving our families money and creating good paying jobs. And because of that solar array and other initiatives we put in place, we were able to cut carbon emissions in Manchester by 60%. Leadership matters, and we can be doing this in communities across our state. As governor, I'll put forward an energy policy that promotes renewable energy and sets clear goals on how to transition away from fossil fuel, because it's the right thing to do to save our families money and the smart thing to do to preserve this incredible state that we live in. And Manchester today is home to an emerging biomanufacturing industry that will revolutionize healthcare as we know it. My office led an effort to apply for a competitive, very competitive federal grant. And I'm pleased to say we were the only municipality in the entire country to win. So we have $44 million coming into Manchester to build out lab space, provide workforce development, and it's creating 7,000 new family-sustaining jobs. But that's just a start, because since then, both Manchester and NASHUA have been deemed a tech hub and have received another $40 million to boost their local economies. It's a game changer for the state when you think about it. And we need to be focusing on opportunities like this for communities across our state. When you think about this growth, though, to support it and encourage additional growth, we need a prepared workforce. And for me, That starts with quality public education. I first got involved in public service when I ran for school board when these three were like this big. So it was a little bit ago. But there were issues in their schools, and I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make Manchester public schools better. And it is still what drives me today, because I know that quality public education leads to thriving communities and creates opportunities for our kids and their futures. I'm going to embarrass you, but my daughter Sarah is about to start her 3rd year as a public school teacher. And I will say that Mike and I are tremendously proud to have a public school teacher in the family. I know how hard our educators work, and I will always stand by our teachers, their students, and their families. And in Manchester, we've been able to make tremendous progress when it comes to public education and student achievement, despite the downshifting from the state that's burdening all of our local communities, a dangerous voucher program that's siphoning millions of dollars away from our public schools, putting it toward private and religious schools, and an education commissioner who is doing everything in his power to dismantle public education in New Hampshire. So I want to be clear with all of you. As governor, I will ensure that our public tax dollars go to public schools. And on day 1, I'll be asking for Frank Edablu's resignation. In a critical way, as Jared mentioned this when he spoke, a critical way that we need to support families in our state is to ensure that we have an affordable place for them to live. And in Manchester, this is something that we worked around the clock on. And as a result, we have over 2,000 housing units in development today. I allocated over $30 million toward affordable housing initiatives. And this past December, we broke ground on one of the largest affordable housing developments in the entire state. The statewide projections show that we need 60,000 housing units by 2030. So we need to start building now with urgency so that our kids, our grandkids, our seniors, and our hard-working families have a place to live in New Hampshire. I am the only candidate in this race who has a hands-on experience of negotiating with developers, incentivizing affordable housing, and working with local communities to build the housing that meets their needs. And when you think about it, it is this hands-on experience that is critical to tackling this statewide challenge and getting these projects off the ground. And we need a governor who understands statewide challenges when it comes to homelessness, substance use disorder, and mental illness. And I will tell you that in Manchester, this is something that we wrapped our arms around. 1, because it is the right thing to do, but 2, because we got very little, if any, support from the state, and that has to change. We tackled these challenges by opening up the first city-run, city-funded shelter during winter for fatality prevention. That shelter is still open today, and it's full. We hired experts, a director of homeless initiatives and a director of overdose prevention. We opened up an engagement center where many of our nonprofits now are under one roof. So an individual can go in, take a shower, get a meal, and immediately be connected to the services they need. And I got the National Alliance to End Homelessness to come into our city and work with us. Their mission is to prevent and end homelessness across our entire country. They're working with Manchester to make sure their programming best meets the needs of the most vulnerable. But I feel strongly that we should be getting them to work with our entire state, so we're helping all of our communities and individuals who are suffering in our local communities. So since we started all of this work, we've seen a 60% decrease in encampments and a 15% decrease in opioid overdoses. It's a start, but we need to do better. And the only way we can do better is if we work at the state level and have a governor who understands these challenges and can work with our local communities to tackle them. So you're all here. You know there's a lot at stake this election. Extreme threats on the LGBTQ community, on climate, on democracy, and on access to abortion. And I want to be very clear that as state and national attacks on reproductive freedom continue, I will always fight for reproductive freedom in the state of New Hampshire. When I think about the Dobbs decision and the fact that New Hampshire is the only state in all of New England that hasn't codified access to abortion, I think about my 2 daughters and all of our daughters and granddaughters and the fact that they have less control over their bodies than we did at their age, and that is wrong. I trust women to make their own healthcare decisions, and I will fight till the end to ensure it stays that way. I'm the only candidate in this race that has put forward a comprehensive plan to not only protect, but to expand reproductive health care, because this is another example of where our state has fallen far behind, and we need to come together and make sure we're providing the services to women and families who need it most. So, the choice in this election is clear. I have always worked to make my community and state a better place, whether serving on the school board, as an alderman, or as mayor. But the same can't be said about my opponents. They've actually used our most pressing issues to enrich themselves. Kelly Ayotte has made millions of dollars as a shadow lobbyist working for companies that are pushing people out of their homes, shipping jobs overseas, and spreading misinformation on climate. As an AG, she refused to prosecute Purdue Pharma, and then she took money from the Sackler family for her campaign. After Sandy Hook, when 20 children were shot and murdered, she was the only senator from New England to vote against universal background checks. And she is the most extreme threat to reproductive health care that we have ever seen in our state. She's voted multiple times for a national abortion ban, 6 times to defund Planned Parenthood, and has said if she's elected again, she will continue to defund Planned Parenthood. She shepherded Neil Gorsuch through the Supreme Court process and then celebrated when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And I'll add one more thing. She supports Donald Trump. So, I think you'll all agree with me, she is wrong for New Hampshire. Kelly Ayotte is wrong for New Hampshire, and we need to keep her away from the corner office. I want you all to know I can beat Kelly, but I need your support. Every public poll has shown that I'm the strongest candidate to take on Kelly. The latest shows that I have a 9-point lead in the primary, and I'm the only candidate that's polling within a margin of error to Kelly. I'm the only candidate in this race that's flipped the seat from red to blue, and I'm ready to do it again. We're building a campaign to win. We have set every fundraising record for any Democratic candidate who has run for governor in New Hampshire, which means that we have the resources. We are building the campaign again to take on Kelly in November. Over 500 local leaders and elected officials have endorsed my campaign, as well as 18 major unions, Teamsters, AFL-CIO, ASME, teachers, firefighters, because they know I'll always have the backs of our hardworking families. Now, we know this is going to be a tough election, but I want you to know I know what it takes to win tough elections. When I was elected mayor in 2017, I beat a popular 4-term incumbent Republican. I was the first Democratic mayor elected since 2003. Manchester is a tough place to win for Democrats, but I've won there multiple times. And with each time I won, I brought more Democrats with me to the school board and to the board of mayor and aldermen. And it's exactly what I intend to do this election. Win back the governor's office and bring more Democrats with me. Because it's going to take all of us. But together, we can support our hardworking families, we can strengthen our public schools, we can protect reproductive freedom, and we can build a state where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. So I'll mention the primary is September 10th. I ask for your vote on September 10th. And I really am grateful for all of you being here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Morrison, and I live in both the North Country and Southern New Hampshire. I'm a very fortunate taxpayer in both parts of the state. Yeah, I'm so lucky. Anyway, thank you for being here so much, Joyce.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that your emphasis for New Hampshire is on better housing and jobs and better public education, so people will want to come here and be able to live, be able to find a job and have housing and educate their children through the public school system. However, there's a landfill that wants to go in this area, and none of that is possible if our air and our water is not clean. People will not want to come here. I know you've spoken to the moratorium, and I know you have stated, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you support a moratorium while DES corrects their landfill siting rules.
And fills the 3
The Waste
positions.
Council,
Yes, exactly.
But I'm realizing that could happen as soon as 2 months. And I know other candidates have talked about a longer moratorium, even to 2028, 2030, and I know there will be legislation coming down the pipe. What can you do to help New Hampshire stop this landfill and out-of-state trash and PFAS that will come with it?
Yeah, so I just want to say that I thank you all, and I talked to John about this earlier, for your advocacy in what you've been doing and bringing this issue to light for so many. We have to take action. I am opposed to the landfill in Dalton and will do everything in my power as governor to stop it. And make sure that we are doing everything in our power, meaning advocating at the federal level as well, to ensure that our water and our air and our soil are free from this forever chemical. It is petrifying to see what's happening not only in New Hampshire but in our entire country. And I agree with you. This is affecting our kids, ourselves, and generations from now.
And it's a state issue now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But to see what happened in Merrimack, and now to see what you're all going through, it is and on the seacoast as well. I mean, there have been pockets in our state that are examples of, issues gone wrong, and state government not being on top of this. And I think that starts with making sure that DES has leadership and employees who understand and are supportive of a clean environment, and understanding that environment affects directly our health, right? And that's not what exists today.
So would you consider a longer
Sure,
moratorium
I would.
than a couple months worth?
Absolutely. We need to. I'm opposed to the fact that we are taking trash from out of state, bringing it to New Hampshire, and having to build a landfill. I'll start there. And I know there's the intercommerce, clause. Thank you. That's in place, and that's something that I really want to dig into to make sure that what is said there and what is being interpreted is actually happening, because I question that
And
if
there are
other
also
states.
other ways to get around
Exactly.
that with state-owned or municipally owned land.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I really admire the work that you all have done, the guidance that you have provided to many, and your advocacy for our health and for the health of our generations to come. You are right on, and we all need to be rowing in the same direction, helping you get there, helping all of us get there. It's critical.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Joyce. My name is Rachel Booth. I'm a select woman in the town of Landrigan, and I'm running to kick the two Republicans out of the House in District 5.
Woo!
I feel time, and I share all of your concerns and all of your stands. I'm just curious what you think that we can do in the North Country to stimulate building for housing, because that's a huge, huge problem up here. not a lot of industry and not a lot of houses for people who do want to come up here to work. What can we do in the North Country for that?
So, coming from the local level too, I understand that what goes on at the local level in terms of zoning. And so I think there are ways that the state could be helping local communities make changes to your zoning that encourages more housing with ADUs, with less parking restrictions, for example. There's an opportunity where the state has funding and will provide that to local communities to really take a serious look at your zoning to make sure you don't have zoning that is prohibitive for housing, but is encouraging affordable housing. I think, personally, we could be doing density bonuses when we're looking at projects. And New Hampshire Housing and Finance, we know, isn't funded enough to help these projects get through. When I talked about the largest affordable housing development that we broke ground on in December, it took about 4 years for that project start to shovel in the ground because we were cobbling together all of the different buckets of financing to get them there. And so we need to recognize that and make sure we are adequately funding entities that will help our local communities with these projects. But also, I've had experience of speaking with developers who are expert at building affordable housing and can share that information with local communities as well. We've had success in Manchester. I know Conway has had a very successful project. I know that the Upper Valley has really great public-private partnerships. So taking this information and sharing it with local communities to get projects off the ground, I think is really helpful.
Well, I wrote a letter to the state senate when they were talking about these ADUs,
Yep.
saying that those wouldn't work up here
Okay.
because they were talking about putting in these accessory dwellings on places and you had to hook into the sewer systems. That doesn't work up here because almost everybody up here has wells and
Yeah.
septic systems, so there has to be
Well,
some
that's-
kind of thing against that.
And that's one of the challenges as I'm traveling around the state too, is the lack of infrastructure, the lack of water and sewer, especially in smaller communities that want housing, but they don't have the infrastructure. And there is actually funding at the state level to help local communities with that infrastructure so you don't have to put it on the backs of the local taxpayers. So there is a way that we can address that.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
You started talking about infrastructure, and that ties into my question, so thank you for that. One of the things that I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about tied to climate change is the infrastructure of our roads.
Mm-hmm.
We very recently have had a lot of storms up here that
Yeah.
have really hampered just getting around this area, making it incredibly challenging to not just get to work, but get to school, get to grocery store, just like live our regular lives. It has given residents in this area, and myself included, kind of like a little bit of PTSD like
Yeah.
whenever it rains. Not knowing whether or not a road is going to stay okay
Yeah.
while you're driving. And so I just wonder if there's any plan that you have or anything you've thought about as far as creating more climate sort of ready infrastructure, especially in rural areas in the state.
Yeah, so actually we were just talking about that at the table down here. It's absolutely something that we've talked about and that we have to do. We've seen the devastation in communities actually across our state from these storms that used to be once in a lifetime storms that are now happening multiple times a year. I mean, it's really awful. And we haven't kept up from an infrastructure perspective. And we absolutely need to. I mean, it is, again, it's one of, to me, a common sense thing. If we are building or reconstructing damage, we should be doing it in a way that will withstand a storm for the future. That's the financially responsible thing to do in addition to making sure that our residents are safe. So I am completely with you. Yes, we have to take into consideration what is happening today and build for the future.
So this is a little bit different. Just recently in Bethlehem, in the last couple of days, there's been anti-Jewish signs, posters put up, and I was just alerted today about it, by some group that is white North Country, I don't know, group I hadn't heard of. But I was alarmed and really disturbed. And I'm like, what can you do as a governor with that kind of hate message that, you know, like I said, I mean, I never expected to see it. Now here it is
Yeah.
in Bethlehem.
You can show up in the local community and say that hate has no place here and anti-Semitism has no place here. We saw that in Manchester when I was mayor. And I got together with the local clergy and we said that, like, no place. This is not something we stand for. This is not who we are, and we will not accept it, and we will prosecute this to the fullest. It's not acceptable. To me, this is where leadership comes in. We need to be supporting our people, all people, supporting our local communities, and showing strength in who we are.
So there is a path of prosecution?
Yeah, if you find out who does it, absolutely, yes. Police prosecute it to the fullest. It's not acceptable, not acceptable, not who we are.
Can you take one more question? I just wanted to comment on Kelly Ayotte ad that crossed me every time I see it. And of course, it's the Craig bill. And
Yes.
Are you going to have an answer to that? I mean, has she ever done anything? And you've done all this work. So
Yeah.
hopefully you've got a response.
Yeah, you know, I mean, she's basically trying to pick her Democratic opponent in this election with that ad.
Okay.
And I stand behind my record in Manchester. You know, we have the information, we have the ads on TV. We have made true progress, and I think Kelly Ayotte shows by that ad that she's pretty damn nervous about going against me after the primary. You know, so yes. But I'll stay here, happy to answer any questions if anyone else has any. I really appreciate the time here on a Sunday that you've spent with us, and I hope that I can earn your vote on September 10th. Thank you.